Hello everyone, I'm John Higgins and the curator of my own YouTube channel, John Higgins Film Review. Please like and subscribe to this channel and videos so that I can help grow and evolve the channel with more content like this. I'm delighted to welcome one and all to this interview special with director Daniel Deville about his new short drama By Any Other Name, which is also produced by Slick Films. Now their work includes the Oscar-winning The Silent Child. And it's a harrowing drama regarding sex trafficking in London, focusing on a desperate woman's search for a missing sister. Daniel, a warm welcome to you.
Hello, John. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so what was quite interesting, what's quite significant about this is that you're also using hearing impaired collaborators. And I would just like to start by before we get onto the short, I just want to talk about that because tell us a bit about the overall demographic of people who are hearing impaired in the industry. I mean, I'm not familiar with the overall, but what's your take on it?
Well, actually, John, it was something that was new for me as well. I like most filmmakers that I know, have never really experienced working with deaf crew, and it was something that came to me through Slick Films, who have obviously they did The Silent Child, which was about deafness, and they've also worked with one of the directors there named Rachel Shenton. She's got a lot of experience with family who are deaf, so she actually runs a foundation called Hear Art, and their remit is basically to integrate deaf filmmakers into mainstream, basically. So that's how it kind of came about. We then got a producer named Camilla Arnold, who's amazing. She's profoundly deaf. So that was my first experience. And she allowed me to be silly, ask all the silly questions and figure out how it worked and just kind of like get to grips with like working with a deaf person. And soon it became like, there was no, you realize there's actually no difference. It's just a language barrier that you have to overcome just like anyone. So that's how it kind of happened. And then, yeah, through Hear Art, we adopted a 50-50 deaf and hearing crew. And I have to say it was quite enlightening.
Okay, so my next question is if anybody in the industry or across the world wants to get involved with that organization, where can they get in touch with people? Is there a website? What can, perhaps you could share social media and stuff, because I think this is actually a very important thing, and I'm sure there are filmmakers out there who will certainly be interested in utilizing the demographics as well.
Let me just grab their Instagram handle for you because they're great. They supported us, they funded us partly. So they are Hear Art Project on Instagram. So Hear HEAR Art ART Project on Instagram. So they're a great foundation. Anyone in that kind of realm or looking to be connected in that way, there will definitely be somebody who can help you out.
Okay, that's fantastic, Daniel. Thanks so much for sharing that. I'm sure people can watch this and do stuff. So let's get on to the film itself. I mean, what was the start-off point for the short?
So the idea, the inception of the idea actually came randomly about 7 years ago when I was at Burning Man Festival. I don't know if you know much about that festival in particular, but they basically create these giant effigies and temples and all this stuff out of wood, and then they burn it at the end. It's a kind of sacrificial thing. I went into a temple, which is a place where you leave notes for your kind of like bereaved like family members or whatever it might be. And I was stood next to this girl. We were both leaving a note for our mothers who had both passed away when we were kids. So we both read each other's note. Nobody talks in there, so it's really kind of like the air's really thick and like dense with that kind of emotion. We walked out, as you do at a festival. We sat down and had a chat for like an hour, and then she just reeled off. By the way, she was a beautiful girl, evanescent, like just so much energy about her. But she reeled off this story about how she'd been sex trafficked at 7 years old. She'd been sold, and she was estranged from her family for 10 years. She got addicted to drugs, all these different things that were just like completely amazing. And then in between that, she told me she was a dancer at Burning Man. She was a professional dancer. And she told me about how dance, her like ability to dance and her passion for dance was the one kind of like thing that kept her going throughout the whole 10 years. And she used that as her like crux back to her real life. And she rode away. We never heard from her again. I don't even know her name. And then like about 4 years later, I'm trying to think of my next idea. And she pops into my head. I'm like, I liked that kernel of like, holding on to the thing that's like dear to you, the thing that comes out of you without you trying. And that's what gets you through those hard times. And it certainly rung true for me because film was like that for me. I grew up, from young age with bipolar and there's a lot of suicide ideation, like insomnia. So I struggled a lot as a child, and film became the thing that was my kind of survival kind of mechanic, really. So that's where the kernel came from, and it just grew from there. And obviously then when it came into researching about sex trafficking, like most people, I think you think of sex trafficking as something that's like in a faraway land, and it's people getting shipped into England and shipped into America. As you do the research, you realize it's literally down your street. It's everywhere, especially with vulnerable kids, especially kids in care. So it became a bit of a thing for me. Then as I got my kind of teeth into it, I was like, right, this story needs to be told. So that's how it became to be.
Mm-hmm. So I've got to talk a little bit about. Must forewarn audiences that there's a shocking sex scene in this film, which really is part of the narrative. It happens in the film, and I just would like to know. Tell us a bit about that specific scene, because did you have an intimacy coordinator on set when you were doing that, or was it just tell us a bit about how that scene was put together?
Yeah, well, to preface that, I don't really write sex scenes. I'm completely open to somebody who's creatively likes to have sex scenes in the films. Sex in a film to me needs to be a device rather than just something that happens or is gratuitous. And it just fit, with that. It's like I couldn't tell that story without seeing like the depths of where she actually is. So when I come to write it, I wanted to be very like stark and real with it. It wasn't supposed to be glamorized in any way, and I think we achieved that. And yes, to answer your question, we had a intimacy coordinator on board. That was my first time working with an intimacy coordinator as well, and they were great. We rehearsed it. We did a day's rehearsal with it. We got the actors in, and we kind of like spent time with them, got to know each other, and it became like something that it becomes very methodical when you do it in that way. It's like very like step by step by step. Right when you see it, it's like, oh my god. But when we're creating it, it becomes like, and then this happens now, and then the hand goes on here, and then this goes here. So it becomes like almost like this mechanical thing. So it helps the actors come away from like the power of what's happening, and it also helps me to understand. I can't just jump because I'm excitable as a filmmaker. No matter what I'm shooting, I want it to be good. So you have to kind of temper yourself and not jump in going, no, do this, do that, do the other. In those moments, you really have to follow that blueprint that you've made.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, thank you very much for sharing that, because I've been hearing the intimacy coordinator becoming more prolific in films now, certainly in these enlightened times with Me Too and Time's Up. So I'm always curious to know what the process is. So let's talk a little bit about your cast, because they are absolutely fantastic. Both the female leads are excellent, and you have some great male support characters in there who are very convincing. So tell us more about your cast.
Yeah, well, the casting process for me is like such a big part of directing. I go into it like really that's my first point of call as a director. That's where I moved from writing to directing. And we took a long time to cast the clown girl. It was something that, when you've got a part that's like predominantly, non-spoken, you have to find somebody that can carry those moments. And that's to me, that's what real acting is. It's the bits in between the dialogue, people who can carry those silences and carry the emotion. So we spent about 3 or 4 months trying to find Lauren Planner, who plays the clown girl, and that was the first step really. So we took our time with that, and then luckily we had I had Jade Anuka, who plays Diane, who's her sister. I had a few different actors in mind. We had one actor on board who unfortunately fell out, and Jade actually came in about 4 days before we started rehearsals. So she was very late to the game, but she just came in and absolutely just did her job. She's from London. She acts with a northern accent. Like everyone thinks that she's northern. So she did a great job. And then we got Duncan Powell on board, who is in Andor, Star Wars Andor at the moment. He's been in quite a lot of stuff. He's quite a recognizable face. He just, he really kind of like came in and embodied the kind of antagonist, and yeah, it came together really, really well. I would always say, it's like finding the right people makes my job a hell of a lot easier, and I don't have to actually bring people along. They know what, they know how to take direction and all the rest of it. So yeah, it became a really good process, and I feel like we got what we needed out of them. I'm very proud of them.
Okay, so let's talk about the production team. I mean, tell us a bit about some of the people you embarked on this odyssey with.
Yeah, well, Slick Films come first on that because they really championed the film. We had a lot of difficulty trying to sell the script at first. I think the subject matter in particular, obviously quite hard hitting. It was quite a, I guess it was something that was like in the zeitgeist at the time I'd written it. Epstein was around, all the kind of elite kind of like sex trafficking rings were kind of coming up, and people were talking about it. And a lot of different places and the different territories, especially America and the Bible Belt, they kind of reject that sort of thing. They don't want to tell those type of stories. And I really noticed that as I was kind of going around and speaking to people. Luckily, Slick commissioned the script, and they're very daring with their they want to tell real stories, and they want to pull no punches, and they really backed me all the way. Chris Overton, who is the Oscar winner that you referred to, he was REP on the film. He absolutely gave me the confidence and freedom to go and make the film I wanted to make, and that's really how it all kind of like started to kind of build up. Really, we then brought in Camilla Arnold, who was our producer, through Slick. And then, yeah, it kind of like just became this kind of like methodical thing. Then everything just started to slowly fall into place. But I would say they were the real pivotal pieces. And then the final piece for me was Moritz Mosinger, who's my DOP, who's absolutely amazing. I found him through some Porsche adverts that he'd done, really beautiful, knows how to light really particularly. And then, yeah, we kind of ran with it from there. It was a really good experience.
Okay, so let's talk about yourself. I mean, obviously, you've mentioned a bit of your background and your journey. I'm just curious to know who and what are your key cinematic influences?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would say from a very young age, it was Spielberg from being a kid. Back to the Future was my kind of like film of films when I was little, and then like obviously I can see E.T. behind you, and Back to the Future, a few different ones. It was like he was like my idol, I'd say, from that point where I had no clue really what filmmaking was. I just knew that I loved it, and it was his kind of like grasp of that medium that pulled me forward. As I grew and as I kind of came into adulthood, I would say like I'm definitely a bit of a David Fincher simp. I definitely he's a big influence on my work. Just his methodical nature, the way he dissects scripts and just brings them down to every single key element is perfect. His craft for perfection is something that I try to emulate with film work. Really a big fan of M. Night Shyamalan still. I think he's a really great writer on the writing side of things. I think he's a great writer. And, I always look to his kind of work on the writing side of things. And then I've actually gone back quite a lot and started kind of like dissect the greats and the Fords and the Leones and people like that. I grew up loving Westerns, so Sergio was a big influence for me as well. So yeah, I've got a lot of different diverse ones, and I would actually add to that Charles Bukowski, because he's my favorite poet, and everything he writes is so raw and real and touches it, everything he says. I'm like, yeah, that's what I think as well. I don't know what that says about me, but like it's definitely something that I touch on, and I feel like my work is a reflection of that style of, I don't pull punches, I tell it like it is. I like to go deep into character portrayal. I like to tell human stories, but I also like to entertain.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk a bit about the locations. I mean, I recognize Leicester Square and the places around the O2 Arena and stuff. So just tell me a little bit about the logistics of shooting in those locations, because I mean, Leicester Square, central London, and I could see the square at the back, and certainly in the key scenes where we see the actress playing the clown, and there's a couple of other scenes. So tell us a bit about that.
I would say that was a great idea at the time, but when it actually came to shooting it, it became very, very like viscerally difficult. And it was like, oh, okay, like this seemed great. Let's shoot in Liverpool Street Station and Leicester Square. And obviously we're a short film, so we don't have the money to block it all off and all the rest of it. And it became very difficult, as you can probably imagine, but we got through it. We got there. Sound was my main problem. So obviously when you're in those places, you have no control over the buskers and people going by and shouting and all the rest of it. So it became one of those kind of things where we actually shot the opening scene of the film. If you remember, she's in the Liverpool Street Station and we're tracking towards her. That was the very first shot that we did, and it took about 23 takes just to get that, because everyone just kept looking in the camera, walking by. We had no control over anyone, so it was like this painstaking thing that maybe the first thing I started, I was like, oh, maybe I've made a little bit of a mistake shooting in such a busy place, but we made it, and luckily, the production value goes up because we took those chances, and yeah, we had a really great location manager on called Mark Greenwood. He was great. He really found the things that we needed, and yeah, we managed to get like the level up by taking those chances.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean it's noticeable, because I always wonder about that, because it's a short film, but the funny thing is I recognize those areas, and you do encapsulate those locations very well. Liverpool Street, which of course has been in things like Mission Impossible in recent years.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about this film. I mean, are you planning to expand? There's two parts to this question. First of all, are you planning to expand this short into a feature version? Is this a proof of concept? And also on top of that, what issues and themes are you keen to explore in your next work?
So yeah, the way I look at shorts is they're a progression to longer form. So I'm always making a short to kind of like push my myself and my reel and my kind of like imprint onto like, you know, TV and feature. So I'm always trying to like add each element as to every time I go along to build myself up a bit and show like different. This one, for example, I really want it to be a really deep character portrayal and focus on a lot of dialogue and relationships and show that side of it, that I can, you know, I have that in my locker. So I never really think about these things about as far as adapting them. To me, adapting them comes if somebody is interested in doing that. I have no plans to do that, but that happens normally when you're at a festival or you win some awards and all the rest of it, and people might latch onto it and want to do that. So I always kind of leave it open to, you know, I know that I write it with a scope to do that because you have to. That's part of the business, and you want people to feel like there's more story to tell. I actually think this film would be great as a limited series, not a feature. I think it's got like a couple of different eras. You know, when she's young, when she's now, when she's captured, and then maybe what her life became like when she kind of afterwards. You know, so that's how I would see it. But I definitely leave that stuff open. As far as what I'm going to do next, we're doing. I've just actually finished my next script, which is called Blue Bunny. I'm also doing that with Slick Films. And that one's about PTSD and war veterans. So that's kind of a weaving, interwoven story about paranoia and psychosis and kind of like the casualties of war. And it's by no means propaganda of war. It's definitely an unglamorized tale of the reality of what happens to veterans and, you know, where they end up and the support that they get and you know, how they have to like live with what happens to them. So that's kind of something I've wanted to portray for a while. You know, I'm a big fan of war movies. Saving Private Ryan is top 5 for me. It was always one of those movies that just blew me away. It just, as far as the craft goes, I was just watching and think, wow, that is just to put that on celluloid is incredible to me. And I've always wanted to delve into that war aspect of film. So this is a little dipping my toe in, and you know, just to tell people in the future when they've got a lot of money to like give me a war script to do or let me write one.
Okay, so obviously let's talk a little bit about Slick Films and their contribution, because I mean, obviously The Silent Child was an incredible success for them. I mean, I think any filmmaker and any company, they want to see the golden Uncle Oscar statue in their hands that they can parade and put on their mantelpiece, or as I think from what Kate Winslet said when she's actually put hers in the bathroom or something,
Yeah,
from what I
a
gather.
lot do, yeah.
Yeah. So how do you feel that the company is, you know, you've mentioned that they're working with you on this new production and stuff. I mean, is this the start of a long-term collaboration between them? Do you feel that they will continue to offer the support that you need for your future work?
Yeah, well, as I said before, Chris, who's our EP, he's so welcoming and so passionate. The reason we get on so well is because we're very, very similar. He's a film fan the way I am. You know, we all start off that way, and you know, if you don't get jaded by the industry, hopefully you hold on to that, and you find enough people that kind of have that same energy as you, and we connected over that. And he's been a great supporter of mine ever since. You know, he loves my. You know, he's literally. I think he said, like, you know, By Any Other Name was the best film that is essentially has come through the company. So he's a real kind of supporter of mine, and he sees a lot of future of us. We've talked about, obviously we're doing our next film together, and then there's been little talks of like bigger things. I'm working on a TV pilot at the moment that Slick Films are coming on board as a partner for. So there's a lot of different projects that we're kind of planning together with scope in the future, hopefully to get to a feature, but we'll see. It's something that I know Slick at the moment are kind of expanding into features now. So now that they've kind of like completed the short film world, won their Oscar, and they've got all these great films coming out and all the rest of it. They're kind of now they are actually like progressing into the longer form. So yeah, there's a lot of scope there and a lot of support there, and it's really, I feel really lucky to be there, to be honest.
Okay, so let's go back to the actual collaboration elements of this film. I mean, this is one production involving the hearing impaired people and stuff like that. So I'm just curious to know, you know, I often ask about diversity and gender, but I think it's important that we do focus a little bit on what your hopes are to actually get talent into the mix that are hearing impaired. And what are you and other filmmakers in your network thinking about at the moment? I mean, what would you like to see happen?
I would like to see us get to a point where it isn't special. And I think that's the point where it tips over the edge, because until we get to that point where people just don't actually need to do that, there'll always be a remit where somebody goes, you know, one film might go, we want, you know, people of, you know, a level of people of color. One film might go, we want a level of deaf people or disabled or whatever it might be. But what happens is you normally pick one or the other because it becomes too difficult to do them all. And I think that's where the problem comes, because then everyone's kind of like, it's great, don't get me wrong. And I know in times of change, everyone has to champion something and go somewhere. But for me personally, I said this to Camilla, who's profoundly deaf, my producer. I said to her, look, I want the best for the job. I'm not picking anyone who isn't the person that I need to do the job, to create my film the best, because everyone around me has to be on it with me, and I have to trust them and they have to trust me. It's not about picking someone for any other reason. So for me, it's about that. It's about picking the right person for the job, but also getting a pool of people in firsthand who we can choose from. So everyone is equal. It's like we haven't just not thought of a demographic. They're all in the pot. And then I separate myself from that. Then I don't go, this was different because it was a collaboration with Here Arts. It was 50-50, and we had to adhere to that because they funded us for part of the film. Whereas like my kind of like outlook moving forward is always to just involve everyone from every demographic, and then just may the best man or woman or person win.
Yeah, I mean, that was something Barbara Streisand mentioned at she presented the Best Director Oscar to Clint Eastwood in 1993 when Unforgiven won Clint Eastwood his predominant. He says, "I don't want to think of male or female directors. I just want to think of everybody as a director in some kind." So I think that's admirable, Daniel. I mean, I wish you well, and I hope that we do get to a point where it isn't special, and we are seeing an equality that is not kind of kind of like the elephant in the room. It's actually the leopard that springs and gives everybody a chance, because I think that's the way with democratic filmmaking now, because everybody has a chance because the technology's got better. So I've got two final questions for you, Daniel. First of all, how has the festival circuit so far helped your film?
It's been amazing. I couldn't have asked for more so far. We're about halfway through our journey. We started kind of entering festivals towards the end of May, so we're kind of about halfway through our list of festivals that we've applied for, and it's been amazing. Our premiere was at Flickers, Rhode Island, which is an Oscar-BAFTA qualifying festival, top 10 festival. So that was just amazing experience. We were lucky enough to win best screenplay there, so that was a really great start for us. And then from there, I think we've won 21 awards so far, including Best of Fest at New Renaissance. We won Best British Short at Lowestoft, Best Short at Hollywood Just for Shorts, and then a plethora of other best directors and all sorts of stuff. So we definitely can't. I don't like to play to awards, but I certainly welcome them, just based on the fact that it does bring eyes on us, and it does allow us to kind of push forward and keep our name out there and keep my name out there. So it's been beautiful. We're a long way to go yet, but hopefully, we're BAFTA qualified as well now, so we'll be waiting for the long list in January. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, I think you've already run off a few stats, which I think will make people take note. Certainly, I always monitor that, but I think the thing about it is that you hope that the film will have a life after the festival circuit, and actually it's seen in various things. So my last question is this very simple one. What are you most proud of about the film?
I would say I am most proud of, I would actually say the quality, funnily enough, because every film I make, I want it to be that bit, even no matter what the budget, I want it to be that bit closer to, a finished article. And one of the bits of feedback I've got taking it around the world is everyone said that, that just looks like a feature film that you would see in a cinema. And I think that is testament to the crew and the hard work that we put in and the effort that we put into it, because I always try to up that level every single time. Aside from that, I would definitely say I'm very proud of the cast, because I think the cast had a very difficult subject to deal with not a lot of time to prepare for it. And I think when you get a solid cast like that who are there for you as a filmmaker and want to give you the best, I think you look at them almost like your little children, and you're so proud of their achievement. And they've, a couple of Jade's won 2 Best Actress awards for Diane, so that was just nice to see. It's nice for your crew too, and it's nice obviously when I win, but when your crew get them, it's okay, great. I've brought somebody in and they've managed to help themselves and through helping me.
Okay, so Daniel, thank you so much for your time and insights today. Just wrapping up for everyone, by any other name is making waves on the festival circuit. As Daniel pointed out, it's already won some awards, and it's in the BAFTA, Oscar and BAFTA qualifying contention. So please do keep an eye out for it whenever you get a chance, whatever you can do. Support indie filmmakers and support films, because they're the lifeblood and future of the industry. Like Daniel, please do check out his future work as and when you can. Just wrapping up for me, please subscribe to the YouTube channel John Higgins Film Review, and you can watch more interviews like this. Recent ones include Catherine Mary Stewart from The Last Starfighter. And if you want to read more articles, you can go to www.filmandtvnow.com, where I do champion independent films. So on that note, Daniel, thank you again, and thank you all for watching.
My pleasure.